Good morning, dear students. In today's session, I will be discussing about transport system in animals. Under this, I will be discussing about the transportation which takes place in various organisms. So now let us move towards today's topic, transportation. What is meant by transportation? The transportation can be defined as the movement of any substance from one place to another. Movement of substance from one place to another. Then what are the substances which get transferred? Some of the substances which get transferred under transportation are water, nutrients, gases, and the waste product released out of the cells, and the things which are present inside the blood. So all these substances, they get transferred from one place to another, right? So this transportation happens in every organism. This movement of substances takes place in every organism. As this transportation is taking place internally. What is meant by internal? Internal means which is taking place inside the body. Okay, so hence it is called as circulatory system. I mean the internal transport system in the humans is called as circulatory system. Okay, once again I'll tell you what is transportation. Transportation can be defined as the movement of substance from one place to another, and some of the things which are getting transferred may be the water, nutrients, and the things which are required for the metabolic activities. What is metabolic activities? The activities which are taking place inside the body. The chemical activities. Okay. So all these things are getting transported from one place to another. And this is happening inside the body. Hence it is called as internal. And the internal transport system in the humans is called as circulatory system. Hope you understood. Okay, so now let us understand what our circulatory system consists of. Our circulatory system consists of heart, arteries, veins, capillaries, blood and lymph. Then what is meant by heart? Heart is termed as the muscular organ. It is a muscular pumping organ, right? So moving to arteries, veins and capillaries. So they are the blood vessels. Arteries, capillaries and veins, they are called as the blood vessels. I'll tell you what are the functions of each. Okay. So moving to blood and lymph. Then what is the function of blood and lymph? So this blood and lymph, they carry the fluid-like substances. They're getting transferred. They're helping in transportation. Right, so they are carrying the fluid-like substances, hence they are termed as the medium of circulation. They are the medium, they're the medium of circulation. Okay, fine. Now let us understand in detail about each of these things. So before that, observe this, how the blood is getting transported inside our body. So you can see there are two different colors of blood vessels. So what are this denoting? You know, the blood vessels which are red in color are rich in oxygen. Means the blood is rich in oxygen. Hence the blood is called as oxygenated blood. And the blood vessels which are bluish in color, they are poor in oxygen. I mean, as they are poor in oxygen, they are rich in carbon dioxide. You might have understood by this time how the blood become rich in carbon dioxide. Just recall what happens under cellular respiration. What happens? The lungs transported the oxygen, right? So where does the actual transportation of oxygen took place? It took place in the alveoli, right? Now from the alveoli, the oxygen get transported to the capillaries because the alveoli are surrounded by the blood vessels called capillaries. and these capillaries transport the oxygen rich blood to every cells, and the cells perform the cellular respiration. As a result of cellular respiration, what are the byproducts which are being released? The byproducts which are being released are the carbon dioxide, water, and the energy. Now the byproduct which is being released, the carbon dioxide, get entered to the blood. Now the blood which receives the carbon dioxide is poor in oxygen. Hence the blood is called as deoxygenated blood, because it contains the carbon dioxide and it is less or poor in oxygen. Hence it is termed as deoxygenated blood, or the blood which contains the more amount of carbon dioxide. Okay, now let us understand what are the components of circulatory system. The first one was arteries. As I told you, the arteries are the blood vessels. So what is the function of these arteries? The arteries carries the blood from the heart to the different parts of the body. Means whatever the blood which has to be pumped out of the heart, it is being carried by the arteries. So these arteries are the blood vessels. They carry the blood from the heart. It carries from the heart to the different parts of the body. From the heart it is carrying to different parts of the body. Now as the blood is being moving from the heart to various parts of the body, the blood is under high pressure. So the walls of the arteries are thick, because as something is going under high pressure, what happens? It suddenly rushes, right? So as it rushes, the walls may rupture, it may get damaged. So to avoid that, the arteries are having the thick walls, right? They're having thick elastic valves. Okay, so the arteries carries, what does it carries? Correct, it carries the blood from the heart to different parts of the body. What kind of blood it carries? It carries the oxygenated blood. Okay, so moving to the veins. What are veins then? The veins are also the blood vessels which carry the blood from different parts of the body to the heart. Veins carry the blood from the different parts of the body to the heart. Now, as the blood is received by the different parts of the body to the heart, the blood is no longer under pressure. So, the thing here is, the valves of the veins are not thick as the valves of the arteries, because the blood is not under high pressure. As the blood is not under high pressure, what happened? The valves of the veins are thin compared to the arteries. Okay, hope you understood. And this veins carries the deoxygenated blood. I told you what is being carried out from the different parts of the body? The deoxygenated blood. How do we get deoxygenated blood? You know, under cellular respiration, carbon dioxide is released. Right, this carbon dioxide is now mixed with the blood, and the blood which contains the carbon dioxide is called deoxygenated blood. Okay? Hope you understood. So now you can look at how the arteries and veins are connected. Okay, the arteries are the blood vessels which are rich in oxygen. The blood which contain oxygenated oxygen, and the veins are the blood vessels which contains the deoxygenated blood. So moving to the capillaries now, what happens is, on reaching to the organ or a tissue, the blood reaches from the heart, right? On reaching to the particular organ or a tissue, the blood reaches the organ or a tissue. What happens is, the artery divides into smaller and smaller vessels. Why? Because the walls of the arteries are thick. As they are thick, they cannot directly come in contact with the tinier cells, right? So as a result, what happened? The arteries divides into smaller and smaller vessels. The reason why they are dividing is they have to bring the blood in contact with all the individual cells. For example, if you take stomach as an organ, okay, so this stomach also contains the blood cells, right? So what happens here is, now as a result the blood is reaching from the arteries or maybe the veins. What happened, their valves are thick, so they cannot directly transport the blood to each and individual cell. Okay, so because of that reason, what happened, these arteries and veins, they are being divided, they are further divided into smaller and smaller. Okay, so these smaller and smaller vessels are termed as capillaries, and these capillaries are almost, they are one cell thick. Means the size of the capillaries are the size of the single cell. Then what happens in capillaries? These capillaries, they help in the exchange of material between the blood and the surrounding cell. This happens across the thin walls of the capillaries. Okay, the capillaries are, as I told you, the capillaries are thin walls, right? So the exchange of materials between the capillaries and the blood vessels takes place. Okay, why it has to be taken place with the help of capillaries? Because they are the smallest blood vessels and they supply the materials to the cells. From the tissues they receives and they supply to the cells. Okay, hope you understood. So next, moving to the blood. So what is blood? Blood is, already you know that blood is everywhere inside our body, right? Every part of our body is consisting of blood. So this blood is mainly having some components. So the components of the blood are the RBCs, WBCs, platelets and the plasma. Then what is this RBC? RBCs are the red blood cells. Why the blood cells are red? Because they are rich in hemoglobin. What is hemoglobin? I told you in the respiration part. It is considered as a respiratory pigment. So the blood which is rich in hemoglobin is the red blood cell. What is white blood cell? WBCs. So what is the function of WBCs? These WBCs, they help in fighting against the infection. Means whatever the infection which may happen to our body, whatever the germs entering to our body, so that is being taken care, it is being avoided by the white blood cells. So they fight against the infection causing germs. Okay, so then coming to the platelets. So these platelets, actually they help in stopping the bleeding. For example, if your body is being damaged, what happened? Suddenly the blood flows out of it, that particular part, right? So the blood has to be stopped immediately after some time. So if it is not getting stopped, what happened? The blood continuously moves out of the body. As a result, the person loses large amount of the blood and he will fall under fatigue. Right? So to avoid this, to avoid the loss of this, what happened? There is presence of platelets. Okay, so these platelet cells, they help to plug the body and leaks. Wherever the leak is there in the body, they plug these leaks by helping to clot the blood at these points of the injury. Wherever the injury is happening, what happened? To that particular part, the platelet cell help in clotting the blood. Okay, very simple thing. Remember, it helps in clotting the blood. Okay, so coming to plasma. Plasma is also a fluid. Okay, it is present inside the blood. So moving to the next, that is the lymph. So the lymph. What is lymph then? Lymph is a colorless fluid. So this lymph does not contain the red blood cells. Okay. So the lymph, they transport the nutrients from the tissues, cells to the blood. I mean the lymph that transports the nutrients from the tissues of the cells to the blood. Where is these cells located? You know, they are inside the tissues, right? So that they are being transported from the tissues of the cells to the blood. So this happens with the help of lymphatic capillaries. What is meant by capillaries? Again, I told you they are the vessels, lymphatic vessels or the lymphatic capillaries. So this happens wherever there is presence of intercellular spaces. Okay, so this the lymph, what does it do? Actually, the lymph is a fluid. It is a colorless fluid. Okay, so this lymph, they carries the nutrients from the tissues to the cells to the blood, and they transport it to lymphatic capillaries through the intercellular spaces which is present. Okay, and this lymph, what happen is they get joined to the large lymph vessels, and it finally open to the large veins, and now through the veins again they further carried out. Okay, this lymph also carries the digested and absorbed fat from the intestine. Okay, and they get transported the excess of fluid from extracellular spaces back into the blood. So moving to the next, let us understand now that what is the difference between arteries, veins and the capillaries. When I talk about the difference here, the major thing which they will ask you is about the difference between arteries and veins. What is arteries? You all know by this time the arteries are the blood vessels. They carry the oxygenated blood from the heart to the different parts of the body. Okay, it carries the blood from the heart to the different parts of the body. Except pulmonary artery, all the arteries carries the oxygenated blood. Why it is not carried by pulmonary artery? I will be explaining you when I explain the mechanism of heart. So what is meant by veins then? The veins are the blood vessels. They carry the deoxygenated blood, right? They carry deoxygenated blood from different parts of the body to the heart. So except pulmonary veins, all the veins carries the deoxygenated blood, right? Then what happens in capillaries? Capillaries are actually the smallest vessels. So they take care of the diffusion of gases, nutrients from the blood to the cells of the body. I mean whatever which is being carried by the arteries and veins, that is been further carried by the capillaries and it reaches the cells. So these are the functions. So what is next? The size, lumen. What is meant by lumen? Lumen is the space between the things. Okay, so it may be the space between the tubes. Okay, so here the size of the lumen, the size of the artery, it is small and narrow. The veins are larger in size. Capillaries are still smaller in size. I mean their size is very small compared to arteries and veins. Then walls of the arteries are thick because the blood coming out of the heart is under high pressure. The walls of the veins are thin because the blood is no longer under pressure. The capillaries and the walls of the capillaries are very thin. So some of the other features are also mentioned here. That is arteries. There is presence of muscular walls and the largest artery is aorta. I repeat, the largest artery is aorta. Presence of valve to avoid the backflow of blood. I mean the veins contain the valve. Why there is presence of valve in the vein? Because the blood should not flow backwards because it is coming from down to the heart. If you think it is coming from down, what happened? It should not go back. So to avoid that, there is presence of valve. So it prevents the backflow of blood. And these capillaries, they are semi-permeable walls, right? They help in the transportation of gases and the nutrients. So hope you understood the difference between the arteries, veins and capillaries. So now the question is, why do we need circulatory system? Okay, so because we need circulatory system because major functions happens under this circulatory system, right? So the circulatory system actually perform the variety of functions. Now, what are the functions this circulatory system actually does? Let us understand the significance of circulatory system. Okay, the significance of circulatory systems are as follows. The circulatory system transports the gases. The exchange of gases takes place, right? So what are the gases which may exchange? It is maybe oxygen and the carbon dioxide. And transportation of hormones takes place. What are the hormones? Hormones are the substances which are being released by the glands. So there are so many glands in our body. So these glands releases the hormones. So that hormones has to be transported. So it takes place, it happens with the help of circulatory system. Next, transportation of waste from the cells. As I told you, the good things are being absorbed. As a result, what happened? The bad things are being released out. So these are the wastes which are being transported under circulatory system. Some of the waste like uric acid which get entered into the urine, right? So some of the waste products, some of the nitrogenous waste products which are being present in the blood, right? All those things get transported under circulatory system. Now transportation of nutrients also takes place. Then what is meant by transportation of nutrients? That is the transportation of glucose. How does the glucose is being transported? I have told you. How do you get glucose? The glucose which is present in the body is being released under the process of digestion. Do you remember? I have explained you the process of digestion. Under the process of digestion, what happened? The glucose is released. It got absorbed in the blood, and that blood carries the glucose to every part, every cells of the body. As a result, what happened? ATP is released. What is ATP? ATP is the energy, right? So the energy is released. So to release the energy, transportation of nutrients is very, very important. And transportation of cells that fight against infection. As I told you, when I talk about fight against infection, you have to remember WBC, white blood cells, right? So these white blood cells actually, they help in building the immunity inside our body. They also help to fight against the diseases or the infection causing germs inside our body. Okay.